Hello guys, it is Bethany and Lily here to give you some fall book recs. I hope you're excited because I have a lot around me. I'm so excited to film this video because I love watching these videos. I love fall. I love the fall vibes. I love reading in the fall. It's just the best time of the year. I'm going to have some categories. So I'm going to have romance, fantasy, and mystery. I don't really read horror or thrillers. I don't at all. I don't read those. So these are going to be like cozy vibes for the fall if you're wanting a good book to read this fall. First, we are going into the romances. So these are like cozy vibes. Either they are set in the fall or they just like kind of give me a fall feeling. I don't really know how to explain it. So first is Before We Were Strangers by Renee Carlino. This is literally my favorite book of all time. Like, I loved it so much. I read it in 2020 and I don't stop thinking about it. I've read it like 3 times, 2 times since then, and it's just so good and I feel like it's perfect to read in the fall. It's basically a second chance romance, childhood friends to lovers set in New York City. So they both go to NYU. Basically they met in college, fell in love, and then something happened. They haven't seen each other in 15 years. And basically one day Matt sees Grace like on the subway, but he doesn't have a chance to like talk to her because the subway leaves. And then it goes back to the past and you see what happens, and then it goes back to the present. And it's just so good. Literally, I love this book so much, and every time I read it, I love it even more. It's perfect, and I just highly recommend it. It's giving fall vibes because it's set in New York, and I don't know why. This just, like, I think about this, and I think you should read it in the fall. I mean, I think you should read this anytime, but it's giving fall. Next, of course, we have The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston. This is a very popular fall vibe book. How many times can I say fall vibes in this video? But I think it's just so good. If you haven't seen it in any other fall book rec video, then you should read it. It's basically about this girl who is a ghostwriter, and she lives in New York City, and she goes home because she has a family emergency, and while she's there she falls in love with a ghost. So definitely giving those kind of vibes, but I didn't think I would like that because I don't know, I just didn't think I would enjoy reading about ghosts. But this book is so good, and it's like the perfect book to read like with a blanket on a crisp fall day. The leaves are falling. It's so good. Next is Lease on Love by Fallon Ballard. I love this book so much, and I feel like the cover is just really giving fall. This isn't really set in fall the whole way through, but there's definitely scenes in like Thanksgiving and Christmas, so I think it's like perfect to read in the fall. So basically it's about Sadie. She lives in New York City and she needs a new place to live. I think she loses her job or something, and she ends up living with Jack, who has this brownstone, and it's like forced proximity, roommates to lovers. It's so good. If you haven't read this, you should. I just loved it so much, and it was one of my favorite books of 2022. I want to reread it this fall because it was so good. Next we have When in Rome by Sarah Adams. I don't know what it is, but this just reminds me of fall. It probably is because it came out in September last year and I read it in the fall. So it just reminds me of fall. But this is about Amelia and Noah, and Amelia is a pop star. She's kind of burnt out, wants a break, and so she goes to this little town, Rome, Kentucky. She breaks down in front of Noah's house and ends up staying there for a bit, and he is a pie shop owner, so it's forced proximity, small town, found family. So good, and I feel like the cover is giving fall vibes, and I just loved it so much. Then we have The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. This is set in England, and it's also not necessarily set in the fall, but it's kind of set all throughout the year, and so as you keep going it ends up in the fall. So I think it's a good time to read it. And this is basically about Tiffy and Leon, and they have a flat share. So he has the apartment during the day and she has the apartment at night, and they like communicate through sticky notes, that kind of thing. It's really cute. There's also a show out. I didn't love the show as much, but I thought it was just such a good book. I've read it multiple times, and I think it's just a cozy, fun romance. So I highly recommend. And then the rest of the romances I have are on my phone. I lied, I have one right here. I don't think this is set in the fall either, but it came out in August, and I think you should read it because it's so good. This is The Roommate Pact by Alice. This is The Roommate Pact by Alice and Ashley, and it's basically like a forced proximity, roommates to lovers, and I loved it. She is a ER nurse and he is a firefighter, and it was literally so sweet. I read it in like one sitting. I loved it so much. I think it's just a great, quick romance to read this fall. I love Alice and Ashley's books. So next we have The Makeup by Haley Gardner. This is in the Fallen for Franklin series, and it is set in the fall, and it is so cozy. I just loved it so much. It's following Chloe and Hunter and it's best friends to lovers. It is so sweet and perfect. It's closed door, and I just highly recommend this series in general, but this one is giving fall because it's set in the fall. Okay, lastly for the romance section is the Sweater Weather series. So I have read Can't Help Falling and Easiest Pie from the series, and it's basically a series set in Harvest Hollow. It's basically 7 different books by 7 different authors coming out each week in the fall. There are like 4 or 5 out right now, and Easiest Pie comes out the 28th. And then Courtney Walsh's one, Can't Help Falling, already is out. I didn't love these books. They weren't my favorite, but I do think they're giving very much fall vibes. And I think if you want closer romances, I would recommend at least giving them a try because you might like them more than I did. I think that's it for the romance. So now we're gonna get on to the fantasy. First, we have Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. I just read this recently and it is so good. One of my new favorite fantasy series of all time. I could not put these down. It was so good. Basically, they follow Kaz, who is like a street thief, and he is tasked with going on this mission, and it's a pretty impossible mission. So he gets together 5 other people to help him go on this mission. It is third person point of view, but you're getting the points of view of every character. And I feel like the found family in this is so good. This is definitely like a fantasy with a very tiny romance subplot, but the romance subplot is so good. Like when you get to those moments, it's so special. And I just feel like this is perfect to read in the fall. Like if you're wanting a good beginner in fantasy, well, I think all of these are good beginners in fantasy, but if you're wanting a good fantasy that's going to keep you on your toes, on the edge of your seat, you're not going to want to put it down, I highly recommend these. And I feel like you're going to fall in love with the characters by the end of it. Like it's so good, and it's also YA. So highly recommend. I also didn't read the Shadow and Bone trilogy before this and was able to understand these two. So love them so much. I already want to reread them because they are so good. Next, we have another duology. So this is Dance of Thieves and Bow of Thieves, and this is basically a enemies to lovers fantasy. I don't really know how to explain it. It's also about a thief, but she is going to get something for the queen. She's getting something for the queen, and she runs into a prince or something. I don't really know, but it is so good. Like such enemies to lovers vibes, and it is incredible. This one I was on the edge of my seat the entire time, and I think the romance in these is so good. Like if you're wanting a fantasy romance where the plot is mostly romance, I think you should read this duology. It's so good. It's also YA. So next, of course, I had to say the Throne of Glass series. I only have the first book because it's such a long series, so I just brought the first one out here. But this is a fantasy series following this main character who is an assassin, and in this first book she is in a competition to become the king's assassin. By the end of the series, so much has happened from this first book. It's insane. There's a lot of different ways to read it, a lot of different orders, but I read the Assassin's Blade before this, which is a prequel, and I do recommend reading it that way. But this is technically the first book, but the Assassin's Blade happens before this. So anyways, it's so good. I found family, action, mystery, romance. It's just so good. I loved it so much, and I loved it way more than ACOTAR. If you've read ACOTAR, you need to read this series. It is very long, but it is so good. I flew through it because I couldn't put it down. So I highly recommend the Throne of Glass series. I feel like if you're wanting just a fun, most of the time fast-paced fantasy series to read this fall, you should read it. Okay, next we have Defy the Night and Defend the Dawn. This is a trilogy, and the third book comes out in January, so a perfect time to read it before the third one comes out. And this is basically a YA fantasy about this kingdom, and it's being like overrun by an illness, and you're following a couple of the characters in that situation. There's romance, there's action, you're on the edge of your seat, and I feel like it's very easy to understand, and there's also like cliffhangers. So I am dying to get to the third book, or for the third book to come out, because I need to know what's gonna happen. And it's just so good. Like if you need a beginner in fantasy, also really recommend these. And I just love Bridget Kimmerer's books. They are so good. Next, we have a few that I feel like you probably have seen in other videos, but it's Once Upon a Broken Heart, The Ballad of Never After, and the third one, A Curse for True Love, comes out in October, so you should definitely read these before then. But this is a fairy tale fantasy with romance, and it's following Evangeline, and she basically makes a deal with a fate, I want to say. I can't remember, but basically she makes a deal with a fate or something, and you're just kind of following her story, but it's definitely giving fairy tale vibes, and it's just really good. I didn't love, like this one, it was a little slow, but the end of this one, literally, are you kidding me? I need the third book immediately. So I do recommend them. I feel like they're very easy to understand, and you also don't have to read the Caraval trilogy to read these. So, and then lastly for fantasy, we have Divine Rivals, of course. The second one and last one comes out in December, Ruthless Vows, and I am dying for that book. But this is about Iris, and she is a columnist, and she's wanting to get a promotion, but she's competing with Roman for this promotion, and that's going on. But also there's a war going on between two gods, and her brother has gone off to fight in the war, and she has this typewriter where she writes letters to him and sends it into her closet. And one day someone writes back, and it is not her brother, it's actually Roman, who works with her. And you just kind of follow that. She doesn't know, but you know, obviously, as you're reading it, and you follow that, and it is so good. Like this is literally one of my favorite books of the year. I loved it so much, and I need the second one. It was just literally, the writing is so good in this book, and I feel like if you're the one person in the world that hasn't read it yet, you should read it, and the cover is stunning. So anyways, those are all of the fantasy, I believe. The last one is the mystery, which I don't have many recommendations. I actually only have one series, which is the Inheritance Games, which you've probably also seen. So the Inheritance Games is the Inheritance Games, the Hawthorne Legacy, and the Final Gambit, and then a spinoff is the Brothers Hawthorne, which just came out recently, and I really enjoyed it. I just really enjoyed all these. I feel like if you want a fast-paced mystery with a little bit of romance, cliffhangers, plot twists, riddles, mystery, all that good stuff, you should read this. It's YA, and the spinoff is really good as well. So it's just a great grand old time that you will fly through. The chapters are super short, and I just really enjoyed it. So I think that is all of my fall book recommendations. I would love to hear your fall book recommendations if you have any below, and I'm so excited for all the books I'm gonna read this fall. I am going to be filming a fall TBR video of all the books that I want to read this fall, which I'm very excited about, but I had so many books in this video, I wanted to separate them, make them into different videos. But I think that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you very soon for my next one. Bye.